Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It is so good to be here. So my name is Joel, and I'm one of the pastors here. Maybe you're new today, and I am just so glad you're here. I look forward to meeting you. Maybe you've been around a long time, and if that's you, I'm also just really glad to be here. I've missed you. I've been away for the last few months, and it's just really good to be back today. So welcome here. I think that the Lord has a rich time for us together, and I hope you can get comfortable and just open your heart and your mind to his loving presence and the reality of his nearness to you today. So this past summer, I was given a great gift. I was given something called a sabbatical. And so after 30 years of being a pastor and after 24 years here at this church, our lead pastor, Josh, had a vision, and he told it to me about 2 years ago. He said, excuse me, I have something in my throat. He's like, one of the things that's going to happen in this new season is we want to really invest in you, and we want to bless you, and we want you to go on to a summer sabbatical as a time to rest and to renew and to retool. And so he went to the board, our board of directors, and they agreed, and then he talked to me about it, and I said yes, and wow, what's resulted has become one of the most life-giving stretches of my entire life. These past 3 months were transforming as I was able to just detach more fully from the demands of ministry. And after all those years of over 1,000 Sundays and meetings and counseling sessions and weddings and funerals and phone calls and late night prayer meetings and texts, to suddenly have that grace and that gift of being able to just stop and to be and to find this season is one of renewing and retooling and refreshing. And so thank you to you, Josh, again. I've thanked him a lot, but it's very important, I think, for you as a church to know that our lead pastor is he cares for his staff, and I'm the recipient of that in this regard as well as many others. And so thank you. Thank you for that. So this past summer was amazing. I'm going to share a couple things God has put on my heart for our church from my time away. But first, I'm just going to tell you a little of what we did. So back in June, my wife and I, at the beginning of the sabbatical, we went to Colorado to a leadership conference where we joined hundreds of other pastors, vineyard pastors, along with those from our team. And we were just equipped, and we had a great time together. And then my wife and I went to Colorado, where we had a marriage intensive, and that's just what it was. Like, it was intense. There was a couple their purpose is their ministry is to love pastors and missionaries. So we were on the receiving end of a lot of love and a lot of prayer, and a lot of healing work was done, and a lot of rejuvenation and a lot of empowering. And so Shannon and I left that week very tired, but also more free and more full than we've been in a really, really long time. We also had the amazing opportunity to visit many churches all around Southern California, and you guys do that sometimes, or maybe that's what you're doing today. But as pastors in a local church, we're here on Sundays, and so we've never been venturing out, and so that was really fun. We got to see some of the great work that God seems to be doing in churches all over Southern California. That was amazing. I also tried to invest in my mind and my body and my spirit. I read a bunch of books. I did a lot of reading and writing as we planned some initiatives we have coming up next month. You're going to be hearing about these things called collectives, and it's something we're inviting the whole church and really calling the whole church to as a time to build relationships and to grow in our faith and to experience Jesus more. So I spent a lot of time doing that. I exercised a lot.
How healthy did you get?
Don't. I lost a little weight. Over the last year since I was preparing for sabbatical, I've lost 45 pounds or so, which you're making me blush. But thank you. I needed to. And I was telling the staff earlier that as I lost the weight, I think more than anything, though, during sabbatical, I lost weight in my soul. I feel lighter in so many other ways spiritually as well. I laughed with my family. I spent time with my adult kids and their families. I spent precious time with my mom and dad in New Mexico, my hometown near Albuquerque. I laughed a lot. I cried a lot. I dreamed a lot. I celebrated a lot. And it was an incredible time. One of the most significant things I did, I think, for my own growth and my own experience was I took a long, hard walk through and across Spain. And so for 2 weeks, I walked on an ancient pilgrim path from the east to the west of Spain, and it ended in a 9th century cathedral. And during that time, it was hard. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it was extremely healing for me of just being in solitude and in silence. And it was also holy for me in unexpected ways that I never would have known. And it was just an incredible experience. And walking through misty mountain mornings and forest paths and mountain trails and just a lot of silence. And it's like the journey itself, the path didn't have any answers, and I wasn't seeking answers through the path, but what the path did create was space. Space to ask better questions, space to stop performing, space to get in touch with really what's going on inside of me in some fresh ways. And I think that that's one of the ways that God begins to work really powerfully in all of our lives, right? When we maybe stop working so hard and we start to slow down enough. And that was something that I really needed to do. It's been a long time without a lot of break and without a lot of discipline for some breaks and ways. So this was just a phenomenally rich time for me, and I'm so grateful to be able to share with you. If I could kind of sum up some of what the summer meant for me, it was like my engine was just completely revved up. Do you ever feel that way in your life? Like the RPM, like in your car, you just woo, and it's like I finally downshifted, and I was given the grace and the freedom to just like woo, shift into a new gear. Or it felt like I had all this in me and I just finally got to exhale. Does that sound good to anyone? Like, it's so important. And it's like I had been holding my breath for so long. And it's this beautiful thing that happens in that kind of silence that comes from living in the craziness of Los Angeles to suddenly being in a place where there's a stillness and a quiet. And it's stepping into that silence and realizing that silence isn't empty. Silence is full of the presence of God. It's full of the presence of God. It's the silence that comes when it's intentional so that we begin to experience the restorative power of the Holy Spirit, his loving presence, his tenderness, his kindness, his strength, his power for a purpose. It's an awareness that he's with us and that he is who he says he is. And I began to be able to increase in my understanding and knowledge of that. And it's when the oil of God or his love just begins to seep into places that are more dry than you know and more empty than I ever even realized. It was an incredible time, so thank you. And I've missed you guys, and it's really good to be back. Now, thank you. This sermon, though, isn't about me, and I'm not going to give like a travel log or anything like that. I did get a lot of revelation in ways. I also got some really intense blisters, and you should see my feet. And thankfully, I did take a lot of photos of the wounds that I incurred. I have a blue toe. I have, I think, one less toenail. I have scars these are the kind of blisters and wounds that you have to take pictures of so you can document that you actually survived. And I really wanted to show them to you, but my loving wife, who also loves you, said, no, you're going to leave the slideshow at home. And so I did, and you don't have to suffer through that. But this kind of rest where we experience the nearness of God, this kind of pause and slowing down where his restorative, very real power and presence comes into our lives, that's something that God desires for every single one of us. He's created us to live that way. It's not just that you have to go on a walk through Spain, or you have to afford a plane ticket to Europe, or you have to have time off of work. God designed every single one of us to live with real renewal in our hearts and spirits, with real rest seeping deep into us. God designed every one of us to stillness of heart and mind, to experience his restoration and renovation of our hearts. But how do we do that? How do we do that? We're not like ancient pilgrims. We're not monks. We don't live in even the desert. We're right here in the middle of the west side of Los Angeles in this time and place. And that sounds really crazy probably and foreign. Well, this is interesting. I found that the word sabbatical, which is what I was on, actually is just not like a fancy perk for priests or pastors or just an academic award for professors. It's actually really related to a word that's much more common to all of us. Sabbatical is just a variation of Sabbath. Have you heard of that word before? Of Sabbath. And it both come from the same Hebrew root word, Shabbat, which means to cease, to stop, to just rest, and to stop doing. And that's not a random thing. It's all through the creation, and all through the heart of God. There are rhythms to our lives, and we lose out on a lot of rhythms in LA. I'm in denial that it's not fall, even though it is fall. It's like September is the hottest month in LA, it seems, and yet we're going into fall, and I'm expecting something else. But there are rhythms in life. There are seasons that God has created. There's a time to plant. There's a time to reap. There's a time to laugh. There's a time to cry. There's a time to go out. There's a time to come in. And there are these rhythms that are just central to what it means to be human and to be someone who lives in God's creation. And one of those really essential rhythms is the rhythm of work and rest. Work and rest. We work and we rest. And if we ignore those rhythms, we go into chaos in our lives. They begin to unravel. Everything gets out of sync. But if we honor those rhythms that God has created, then life begins to flourish. And we begin to become more free and more full and more purposeful and more human. And so this rhythm of work and rest, I want to just start by saying that the idea of work isn't bad. It's very important that we work. It's very important that we work well, that we hustle hard, that we innovate, that we create, that we imagine, that we cultivate, that we work. But it's also really important that we rest. And by rest, the Bible talks a lot about it. It doesn't mean rest as in like kind of chill, or rest as in just slow down a little like a luxury, or rest as something that maybe some of us can afford, but not all of us can. It's we work and we rest, and rest is woven into the grain of creation. It's part of who we are. We can't escape it. So I want to do a journey through like 5 or 6 passages real quickly that talk about this rhythm of work and rest. And you don't need to follow along in your Bible because we're going to go fast, but follow along on the screen, okay? Does this sound good? Are you with me? Yes. All right. Genesis 2, the very beginning, this creation account, we read this. By the 7th day, God had finished the work he had been doing, the work of creation. So on the 7th day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the 7th day and made it holy because on it he rested from all the work of creation that he had done. So God didn't rest because he was tired. He rested to set the rhythm for us. He worked 6 days and he rested. He did that to impart and to set that rhythm into place for our lives. 6 days of work, 1 day of rest. This is part of the universe. It's part of God's creation. We can fight it, but eventually it will win. Later, we move on to Exodus chapter 20. God gave his people 10 commandments, and this idea of Sabbath, of 1 day of rest and 6 days of work, it made it into the 10 commandments. So we read this: remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, or by keeping it holy. Remember it by keeping it holy. 6 days you will labor and do all your work, all of it. But the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it, you will not do any work. You will not do any work. You're to do all your work in those 6 days. And you say, but God, I have like 2 jobs. I know, but you get it all done in 6 days. But God, you don't understand, like I'm trying to start a business. Get it done in 6 days. Because on the 7th day, it's a Sabbath to the Lord, and on it you shall do no work. Now, for Israel, Sabbath was a command. It was necessary. It was vital. It was obligatory. It was the law. And it was not just rest. It was also a type of resistance. It was a type of rebellion to the culture around them because they had been taken into slavery repeatedly. And as they were, this is a way of saying you will no longer have your value based on your work and on your slavery, your bricks, your quota, your output. You are the children of God. And you will rest. And you will enjoy that rhythm. And then in Leviticus, jumping ahead, we see this expanding now, and this is amazing. Look at this. In the 7th year, the land is to have a Sabbath or a rest. The land. Isn't that beautiful? Every 7th year, the land itself was allowed to breathe. And then after 7 cycles of 7 years, there's another rhythm. It's called Jubilee. In Leviticus 25:10, it says, consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It'll be a jubilee for you. This is when families would come back together, debts would be released, slaves would be freed. It's an incredible rhythm. You see how this pattern is happening all through the beginning. And then even the life of Jesus, as we move into the New Testament, he modeled like working hard and doing the works of the Father, and then often then rhythmically detaching and going away and retreating to lonely places and praying. Jesus brought all this into focus, and we land on this in Mark chapter 2. He says this, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So what he's saying is the Sabbath wasn't made for God. God doesn't need the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for us. It was made for you. This rhythm of you work hard and then you rest well. And that's a gift to us. It's something that we need, and it's something that God has provided for us. We just have to enter into it. It's not a burden. It's a gift. Isn't that beautiful? God's so good. He's given us that. He knows what we need. He's our good shepherd, Jesus, and he knows how to lead us very well. So what's the problem? We don't really live in that rhythm. Anyone have your rhythm of work and rest out of balance? Yeah, sometimes it's all rest maybe, and not a lot of work for some of you. And even if that's you, it doesn't mean that you're even really resting. You might just be kind of idle. But I think for most of us, it's the opposite. We are on a treadmill of activity. We go hard. This is like this year in Los Angeles with these freeways and this culture and this kind of technology. And this is where we live. And we don't live in this rhythm very well. And that's what I want to talk about today. And I just want to say that as we talk about this, I want you to know that I'm not preaching this from like some hammock in Hawaii, sitting on the side of the ocean talking about the beauty of rest. Like I have the same chaos in my life you do in some ways. I have a backyard. When I go out to just try to rest at night, I live in a neighborhood where there's always like a helicopter just hovering above my house with a spotlight shining down, and I can hear some weird voices through a PA system. There are motorcycles, like motocross bikes on my front street doing wheelies like for an hour at night as people are walking their dogs. Like I have a dog, I have a Woodle, like this doodle dog that protects us from every violent mail person and FedEx person and Amazon person as they dare to approach our porch. And he barks and barks and barks, and our floors make a lot of noise. And every time I get a notification, which is constantly, my phone goes off in my pocket, my watch goes off, my headphones go off, my iPad goes off, my computer goes off, and it's just constant madness. And I have demands, and I have bills, and I have deadlines, and I have notifications, and things that are always reminding me that there's more to do and there's more I need to produce, and it's just more and more and more. And so I wrestle with schedules, and I wrestle with hardships and responsibilities, and I need Sabbath just as much as you do. So I'm not preaching this morning because I just went and sat on the beach for 3 months. I'm preaching this because as I got away, God began to show me that this is an opportunity and actually a calling that we have to experience every 7 days. That as I was leaving that time with God overseas that I found so rich and so transforming, I didn't want it to end. And it's in my spirit, God was like, it's not supposed to end. There's a rhythm of experiencing my newness, experiencing my life daily, but also through something called Sabbath. And so I'm learning this just like many of you are. But here's the reality for us. Sabbath isn't optional, okay? Think of it like this. It's not optional. It's actually oxygen. It's oxygen for us. Without it, our lives collapse into chaos. But with it, we don't just rest and kind of chill. We actually begin to flourish. We actually come back to life. And we wonder if we're not experiencing it and our lives are just collapsing into chaos, then we wonder why we're exhausted and why we're empty and why we lack discernment and why we lack faith and why we're not hearing the voice of God and why we're not experiencing his loving leadership in our lives. And it's because we're constantly moving and not making any time for him. A lot of us make room for Jesus in our hearts, but we don't make room for him in our schedules. And that's very, very vital for us to do. Today, in the time we have left, I just want to give you a couple truths, I think, about Sabbath that can actually really transform us and bring us more into that flourishing life that the Lord has for us. The first is this. Say, work empties us, but Sabbath, rest, fills us. Okay, work empties us, but rest fills us up. And work emptying us doesn't mean that work is a bad thing. Like I said, we're to work hard, and we're to press on. But the reality is it wears us out when we do that. And one important thing to realize is as we work, and I want to talk about work for a minute before I talk about rest. As we work, God is with us as we follow after him. His presence is with us even in the hustle, even on the 405, even in the midst of opening bills, even as you're going through 45 notifications in the morning. The Lord is with us. I think back to my pilgrimage experience. There was a time where I was on day 2 of this long walk, and I had trained hard for this walk. Okay, I walked the Playa Vista Bluffs. Do you know where those are? Kind of by LMU. It's a 300-foot hill. I didn't realize that these Spanish mountains were actually mountains. Think Oregon or something like that. And so I wasn't actually very prepared, but I had worked hard and I had tried. And so when I got there, I was intimidated, but I started to do it, and day 1 was amazing. And then day 2 was constant hills, like hill after hill after hill. And so I'm walking through on these paths and giving it all I have, I'm kind of proud of myself, I'm going hard, and I'm going, and it's this ascent, and it's climbing up this hill. And I thought, I can do this. I can get over this hill. So I just kept pressing everything I had. I put on the right music. I'm worshiping. I'm yes, step by step. Jesus, you and me, we can do this. And it goes on for an hour. And at that point, I lost 5 pounds, and my heart rate is going totally sky high, and I'm getting really exhausted, but I'm almost to the top, and I'm so excited. And I get to the top, and I turn the corner, and I look as the path continues, and guess what? Another hill. Another hill. This is even more intense. So it's So then I start going up, and I can do that hill too. And it takes 30 minutes, and I'm going 1 mile an hour. I'm supposed to be going 3 miles an hour. It's not happening, but I'm pressing myself. I get up to the top of that hill. This is huge, okay? This is in my mind, a mountain. And I'm going up, and I get to the top, and I turn around, and it's another hill. I'm like 3 miles into a 15-mile day, and this is the whole day. So I look at the chart, and it's like, oh, the elevation is just constant this day. I couldn't do that. And I'm starting to sit back, and my knees are starting to hurt. One of those toes began to turn blue from going downhill and uphill. And I'm starting to think, God, what am I doing? Like, I knew clearly in my spirit that I wanted and needed to do a pilgrimage like this for lots of reasons I won't go into. But at that moment, I was like, God, why am I doing this? I could have been in Florida at my friend's beach house. I could have been driving on a motorcycle up the coast, even though I don't have a motorcycle. I could have been doing a million other things. But instead, I decided to spend the most restorative, renewing season of my life hiking brutally, being defeated. And right about that time, I'm getting really angry. Like, this woman who's like half my age literally starts jogging up the hill. She passes me and, wait, she's eating a carrot. And she's just like, hi, as she jogs past me. And I have my walking sticks out, and I'm like digging them into the ground, and my feet are turning blue, and I'm feeling like an idiot. And I'm thinking, I have to come back and tell this church that I quit on day 2. I'm gonna have to take a taxi. And like everywhere you look on these trees, there are little, not everywhere, but occasionally there are business cards of like, call a taxi, and it's okay to stop. And it's like, I'm not gonna call a taxi, I can't. So then in the midst of all that, I'm like, Jesus, why am I doing this? And I felt like in that gentle voice, like in my spirit, I felt like I heard the Lord just say, because I asked you to come work hard. I asked you to come and walk with me here. And then he said, I'm with you in the struggle. And it was just like an instant sense of a download of God just speaking, I'm with you in the struggle. I'm with you even as you're sweating. I'm with you as you're killing yourself. I'm with you as you're trying your best to obey me, even though you feel defeated. You feel like you can't go on. You feel like giving up, but no, the Lord is with you. And that spoke so powerfully to my soul. And I think I just want to share that with you because I know that this morning there are some of you that are here in this room this morning and you're feeling like you have your own hills to climb. And you're not in Spain climbing up some path on a mountain trail, but you have hills that are about to break you. There are relationship issues, and you're wondering, what am I doing? How am I going to get through this? There are financial pressures. There are job situations. There's confusion about your future. There's pain in your body. There's a diagnosis that you don't know what to do with, and you're thinking, God, what's going on? How am I going to get through this? But could you hear the voice of the Lord just speaking to you what he says to all of his children, that I am with you even in the struggle. I'm with you even in the struggle. Can you receive that today? He is with you even on the hard hills that you're climbing. That's something that I've just taken home with me. Okay, so then let's talk about rest for a minute. So even though I knew God was with me, I still had another gigantic hill to climb, actually like 7 or 8 more miles of them, and I was done. So at that point, I'm not in that great of shape at all, so I'm thinking, what am I doing? So I decided I can't do this. My legs were hurting, I was out of breath. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna rest a lot, right? So I walked as far as I could, like 30 feet up, and then I just leaned against a tree for about 15 seconds, caught my breath, and then I started going again, like plowing through with everything I had. And then like 20 feet later, I just lean against a tree. Is that a good method? I thought if I rested some, it would work. Well, it didn't work. And I was only going like 20 feet every 20 minutes, and it wasn't good. And finally, as I'm just sitting there thinking, this is gonna take me all day, and I may have to call that taxi, suddenly this guy, like the girl, but this guy is older than me, 20 years older than me, he starts running up this hill, walking really quickly. And he's like, hey, are you okay? He spoke English, which was really cool, because I don't speak Spanish well. And I said, no, I'm not really okay. And I was out of breath, I'm sweating, I have like this bandana that's soaked, and I was miserable. He says, what's wrong? What are you doing? And I said, I'm exhausted. He's like, when did you rest last? And I said, I'm resting now. And he's like, you're not resting. What are you doing? And I said, I'm resting. And he said, that's not how you rest. He said, I'm due for a rest. Let me show you how I rest. And he went on to tell me that what he does is he walks 5 miles hard, and then he rests for an hour hard. So he's like, come with me. So we go to this little field, and he's like, first we take off our backpacks because they're too heavy. So I took it off and I put it on the ground. He's like, then we take off our shoes. I was like, why are we taking off our shoes? We have places to go. And he's like, no, we rest. So I took off my shoes, and then we took off our socks. And then he said, we just lie down and we slowly drink water. And we tell stories and we laugh. We remember the journey we've been on. We look where we're going. We think of our families and our friends. We delight in creation. We laugh. We rest. Our hearts become more still. We give thanks to God. And it took like 30 minutes, and I started to rest. And after an hour, I was excited. And then at that point, we put our socks on, we put our shoes on, we put our backpack on, and we could finish going. And that rhythm worked for me for the rest of the trip. And so the reason I share that is because I think most of us have a problem like that with Sabbath, because the reality is Sabbath rest that we're talking about isn't a bunch of little stops leaning against a tree. It's not like getting off work and plopping on the couch while you scroll on your device. That's not Sabbath rest. Sabbath rest isn't even having a morning off so that you decide you can do all the chores that you need to do. Sabbath rest isn't like zoning out to YouTube all night or falling asleep with Netflix on autoplay. Sabbath rest is intentionally stopping and ceasing. You work 6 days and you stop on the 7th. And during that time, you take off your backpack, so to speak, you take your shoes off, you enjoy creation, you laugh, you play, you recreate, and it's an incredible thing. Does that make sense? Something amazing that I heard from, his name was Tom, and I appreciate him a lot. Not tiny scraps of rest, not a power nap while your phone buzzes, not a day off from work, but stopping long enough to actually recover so that you can go on. Now, most of us have a really hard time at this because we live in a time and place in a city where our souls and our bodies just don't want to stop. And yet we have to stop in order to survive. I mean, think of your life for a minute. If you're like me, you wake up to an alarm clock. That's kind of violent, right? Like this morning, I snoozed like 3 times to this annoying beep, beep, beep that's just going off, like startling me. And then I get in traffic, and there's the 405, the energy constantly, even at 2 in. And then we scroll while we eat, we text while we drive through like Apple Play or whatever it is, and then we answer like emails at red lights. We just keep going and going and going in our lives, and then we wonder why we feel so narrow and so thin and so empty and so bland and so dull and so unsatisfied and so tired in a way that sleep won't even restore. Am I the only one that feels like that a lot? And listen, whether listen to that, whenever, realize this, you're always becoming someone. You're always becoming someone. Who are you becoming? What kind of person are you becoming? Are you becoming more like Jesus? Or are you becoming more chaotic, more frantic, more scattered, more depleted, more empty in your life? The pace that we keep shapes us. The pace that we keep shapes us. The pressure that we carry forms us. And whether you realize it or not, you're becoming like the life that you live. And none of us drift into peace. You don't just drift into it. You don't ever just stumble into becoming a deep person. You don't scroll your way into spiritual breakthrough. You don't. You have to be intentional about it. Hebrews 4 says this, there remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. Can we just read that together? There remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. Stop right there. God has given us, it remains, a Sabbath rest. Everything our achy, weary, tired, depleted, hectic, frantic, chaotic bodies and minds are longing for. It's Sabbath rest, and it's extended to us. But it's not just a nice invitation. It's actually a command. It's something that God in his wonderful goodness, in his great generosity, gives to us because he knows that we need it. And he offers that to us in his love. It's not just a rule to keep. It's a way of life that we're to enter. Think of it this way. It's not about legalism. It's about liberation. It liberates us. Working naturally empties us, but rest naturally fills us if it's Sabbath rest. Okay, so then point 2, we can say it this way. Without rest, life just becomes noise. I think it was Claude Debussy or some old famous composer who said that music is the space between the notes. It's like the rests. And without the rests in music, it's just constant noise. There may be melody in the music, there may be harmony, there may be beautiful rhythm, there may be all kinds of beautiful things happening in a musical composition, but without the defining rests that take place and the length and the duration of the notes and the rests involved, it all just becomes chaotic noise. And that's how our lives are without rest. The pilgrimage taught me a lot about silence and solitude. It was a long walk, just listening to the sounds of my feet, listening to cowbells. Cows have bells there. Horses whinnying, chickens, or not chickens, roosters crowing? That's what a crow does. What does a rooster do? Whatever. Roosters making their noise. The sound of like walking sticks in the ground. And it was just all these, the wind blowing, the birds chirping. It's like that was but then what surprised me was what became really loud in the silence was all the noise in my head. Because I had for so long numbed myself with constant podcasts and music and teachings and media. And now in the absence of all of that, being completely detached, suddenly the noise of my anxiety and these insecurities and these uncertainties and these pains and these different things where my soul was restless, all those things began to surface. And it's in that place then that God was able to begin to meet me powerfully. Because God doesn't have to sift through all these other mechanisms that we've put in place. It's like let these things rise to the surface so God can have his way. The psalmist says it this way in Psalm 46, verses 10 and 11. This is a very powerful passage. He says, "Be still and know that I am God," says the Lord. The psalmist is writing this. It's the words of God saying, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress." And then there's that little word in italics, Selah. Selah, it doesn't mean the end. It's actually like a musical term that means rest, pause. But it's more than that. It's like a rest and a pause with a weightiness to it. Like let that sit. Like think of it like marinating. Okay, Selah means like, let's marinate that. Let's let that sit and seep into deep places for hours. Let's just marinate in that reality. What reality? Look at just the first 2 words. The Lord says, "Be still." Just marinate in that. Selah. And be still it's not like a nice invitation. You guys, you should lie down, put your feet up. This is a command. This is the Lord saying, be still. I mean, in the context of this psalm, wars were raging. Mountains were shaking and waters were rushing, and it was a chaotic place, and the people of God were trying frantically to control things. They were trying frantically to hold it all together in their own strength. And in the midst of that, God says, cease, stop, be still. It's a declarative thing he's saying. Be still, and as you're still, know that I am God. I like to emphasize I don't know if that's what it does in the Hebrew, but Josh knows that. But it's like, be still and know that I am God, not you. You're not God. So all that this is happening around you that's so chaotic and frantic and you can't handle it, be still. I am God. And then let's Selah and just marinate in that for a while. Just sit in that truth. It's like the conductor of an orchestra. It's like if there's a fermata, which means rest. I studied classical music for a long time. And then there's a Selah, like a fermata over a rest. It means the conductor is going to like hold you in this rest. And everyone's attentive to the conductor. And we don't know how long he's going to hold us there, but at some point then, he's going to release us back into the peace. And we're going to start making a different type of music again, but not until the conductor releases us in that way. Be still and know that I am God. And that word Selah that we read at the end shows up over 70 times all through the Psalms, because there's so much for us to just chew on and meditate on and marinate in. Our life is the same way. It's just noise without the rest. Without Selah, it's just chaos. And when we don't rest, we lose our way. We become less human. We lose our compass. We lose that ability to flourish, to be the neighbors we need to be the spouse we need to be the parents we need to be the coworker we need to be. God has such a beautiful, redemptive plan for each one of our lives, that we could be a fruitful vineyard, like people who are his image bearers, carrying his presence into the darkness all around us. There are people all around us in this chaotic, beautiful city that are overwhelmed and falling apart. And God desires us to be his image bearers, carrying his presence into the corners of your neighborhood, into the lives of the people all around you, just the way you are. Like normal, ordinary people infused with the power and presence of God because he's good to us and he's generous. And he desires to use us in that way. But that doesn't happen if we're restless and frantic and crazy in our minds, because we simply haven't been obeying the loving call of God to work and to rest and to keep it in rhythm. Without rest, life just becomes noise. No one likes to listen to noise either, do they? Like your kids, your spouse, your parents, your coworkers, they don't like noise. Like it's like do people want to turn you down because your life is just noise? Or do people want to eat the fruit from your life because you're a well-watered garden with so much for people to enjoy? That's what the Lord desires and wants to provide to us in his love and in his grace. So what does Sabbath look like? Well, a few quick things. And one is you can think of it like this. When you are setting apart time to rest and to be with the Lord, it's been said that you first just stop. Everyone say stop. Stop. Be still. That means actually close the computer. It means don't put your phone down, turn it off. If you're like me, that's what I have to do because it'll buzz. Stop. If you have like a device that buzzes, take it off and stop. Don't catch up on chores. Don't start like Instagramming all day. Just stop. Then after that, you begin to breathe. You begin to marinate in the reality of the goodness and the presence and the restorative nearness of God, that he's with you. Open to him. Open to him. Breathe in his goodness and his presence and his love. Ask his Spirit to come and refresh you. So we stop and we breathe, and then we begin to enjoy. This is one of the most beautiful parts. Like when I was lying in that field with this new friend, Tom, we started telling stories. I think we both cried at one point. We both laughed at one point. We ate good salami or ham or something. It was amazing. And during that time, after we stop and after we breathe, then at that point we begin to enjoy. We enjoy friendships, we enjoy community, we enjoy God's creation, we enjoy food, we enjoy drink, we enjoy the creative process, we enjoy God, we enjoy one another, we enjoy his creation. And then finally we behold. So we stop, we breathe, we enjoy, and we behold. And behold means we begin to worship Jesus. We begin to read his word, not just for information, but for transformation. We begin to meditate on it, to just enjoy it, to selah on something that God speaks to us, to let it just sit with us. So what would it take for you to put a selah in your life? What would it take for you to carve in Sabbath into your life so that you have an appropriate rhythm of work and rest? I mean, for some of us, maybe it starts with half a day, but regardless, what God's desiring to do is for us to enter into this rhythm of Sabbath that he's called us to, that we sit with him long enough to renew our minds to the truth that he is God and we're not. I think one of the most beautiful things about this idea of Sabbath is the reality that, all of our souls are longing for rest. Right? I think Augustine or someone said that our souls are all restless until they find rest in God. We're restless people. And the beautiful thing is we don't have to go on a sabbatical. We don't have to go far away. The rest of God is not out there somewhere. The rest of God is available to you right where you are, right in this place, right in your own body and your own spirit. The rest of God is here for you. It's Jesus. And he's waiting for you, and he's inviting you and calling you to come to him. I'll close with this in Matthew 11:28. The worship team, you can make your way back up. Jesus says this to us. He says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." He says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." That's an incredible call of Jesus, to come to him and he will give us rest. And that's a call that's not just for sabbaticals in Spain. It's for you in this room. It's for the person sitting next to you. It's for your family. It's for parents. It's for workers. It's for engineers. It's for retirees. Every one of us has been called to enter into this good, restorative rest of the Lord. Would you stand with me? And Shannon's going to come and lead us in a response time, and we'll pray.